It was late 1968. Outside, Detroit was freezing. Snow piled against factory walls. The streets were empty. But inside a quiet engineering room in Highland Park, Michigan, a group of Dodge and Plymouth engineers stood around a dyno sheet that didn't make sense. 425 horsepower from a mid-range engine, not a race-only HEMI, not a 446-pack, not even a heavily modified crate motor, but a 383. The room went silent. Someone lit a cigarette. Someone else walked out to make a phone call. And what almost nobody knows is that single dyno test would quietly trigger one of the most calculated engine assassinations in Mopar history. Because the truth is, Dodge didn't just stop building the 383 stroker. They killed it on purpose. And the reasons why have been buried for over 50 years. Most people think the Chrysler 383 was just the safe, practical big block. The middle child between the screaming 340 small block and the monstrous 426 HEMI. A reliable daily driver engine that made decent power without destroying transmissions or insurance premiums. It was the engine your uncle had in his satellite, the engine that pulled boats on weekends, the engine that started every winter morning without complaint. Respectable, dependable, boring. But you think you know this story? Not like this. Because by 1967, engineers had discovered something terrifying about the B-Series block, something that would change everything. Let's talk about the numbers first. With a 4.25-inch bore and a 3.38-inch stroke, the standard 383 cubic inch Mopar big block was already capable of producing around 325 horsepower and 425 lb-ft of torque in street trim. That was the base, the starting point, the version that showed up in family sedans and mid-level muscle cars. In the Roadrunner's high-performance Magnum configuration, things got more interesting. Compression jumped to 10.0.1. Larger valves improved airflow. A more aggressive camshaft profile extended the power band. Power climbed to 335 horsepower, and torque peaked near 430 lb-ft at just 3,200 RPM. 3,200 RPM. That's barely above idle in a performance engine. The 383 Magnum didn't need to scream to make power. It just delivered. Low in the rev range, right where street cars needed it most. And that was the safe version, the version Chrysler was comfortable selling to the public. But then someone inside Chrysler asked a dangerous question. What happens if we give it more stroke? That's when the experiments started. Deep in Chrysler's performance division, a small team of engineers began exploring the 383's untapped potential. They weren't trying to build a race engine, not at first. They were just curious. What could the B block really do? The answer would terrify them. Engineers took the 383's massive 4.25-inch bore and swapped in a longer stroke forged crankshaft, stretching it out from 3.38 inches to 3.75 inches. The pistons were replaced. The connecting rods were swapped for heavier-duty forgings. The rotating assembly was carefully balanced, and suddenly, displacement jumped from 383 cubic inches to roughly 426 cubic inches. Yes, the exact same displacement as the legendary HEMI, the same 426 cubic inches that had dominated drag strips from California to Connecticut, the same number that struck fear into every Chevy and Ford driver who pulled up at a stoplight. Except this wasn't a HEMI, it was a wedge head engine, simpler valve train geometry, fewer moving parts, more compact cylinder heads, cheaper to build, easier to maintain, far more compact under the hood. And then the real nightmare started. The first prototype stroker engine was bolted to a dynamometer in January 1968. Nobody expected what happened next. On the Dyno, early stroker prototypes, running 11.5.1 compression, aggressive cam timing, and dual Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors, were already making over 410 horsepower. 410, from what was essentially a modified family car engine. Engineers ran the test again. Same result. They checked the calibration equipment, they swapped fuel, they verified timing marks. Still 410 horsepower, but they didn't stop there. In race trim, with open headers, revised ignition timing, and blueprinted internals, some builds were pushing past 440 horsepower, a few touched 450. The engineers started taking notes in sealed notebooks. But the torque, that's what scared them. Peak torque numbers were exceeding 480 lb-ft before 4,000 RPM. Some test mules hit 500 lb-ft at just 3,500 RPM, 500 pound-feet at 3,500 RPM. For context, the mighty 426 HEMI made around 490 lb-ft at 4,000 RPM in street tune. This engine was matching the HEMI's torque output at lower RPM, which meant more usable power in real-world driving. Mechanic Dave Richards, who worked on several of the prototype builds, later recalled the experience in a 1987 interview. "It didn't rev like the HEMI," he said. "It didn't have to. You touched the throttle and it just shoved the car forward like a freight train. No drama, no buildup, just instant, violent acceleration." He paused. "We knew we had something special. We just didn't know if they'd ever let us use it." Testing moved quickly after that first dyno session. A 1968 Dodge Coronet was pulled from the assembly line and designated as a test mule. Engineers stripped the interior, installed the experimental stroker, and bolted in a reinforced 4-speed transmission. No special tires, no roll cage, just a street car with a monster under the hood. At the Chrysler Proving Grounds, the Coronet reportedly ran the quarter mile in 12.6 seconds at 111 mph on street tires. That put it within striking distance of factory 426 HEMI cars, vehicles specifically designed to dominate NHRA superstock classes. A second test car, a 1968 Plymouth Belvedere, ran 12.4 seconds at 113 mph with minor tuning adjustments. The engineers exchanged nervous glances. They had created something that wasn't supposed to exist. But here's the problem. The Stroker 383 cost nearly 40% less to build than a HEMI. Think about that for a moment. At the time, the 426 HEMI option added roughly $605 to the sticker price of a new Dodge Charger or Plymouth Road Runner. That was real money in 1968, equivalent to almost $5,000 today. The HEMI also required heavy-duty suspension, upgraded brakes, and a reinforced transmission, pushing the total performance package cost even higher. The 440 Magnum came in cheaper, but still commanded a premium over the base 383. Buyers paid extra for those additional cubic inches. But the Stroker 383? Engineers estimated Chrysler could mass produce it for barely more than the existing Magnum package, around $75 to $90 extra in manufacturing cost. Not $75 extra for the customer. $75 extra to build. Suddenly, the company's entire performance hierarchy was under threat. If word got out that a stroked 383 could match HEMI performance at a fraction of the cost, why would anyone buy the flagship engine? And then things got worse. By early 1969, word had leaked out of Highland Park. Racers talk, engineers talk, suppliers talk. At the 1969 NHRA Winter Nationals, privately built Mopar stroker engines, based on the 383B block, started appearing in superstock classes. These weren't factory builds. They were backyard engineering projects, guys with machine shops and big dreams. Some were reportedly making over 460 horsepower with revised camshafts and ported heads. Others were pushing 475. One driver, campaigning a stroked 383-powered Plymouth Satellite, ran an 11.9-second pass at 118 mph, 11.9 at 118. That was HEMI territory. That was where kings lived. And he was doing it with an engine that cost half as much to build. Chrysler executives attended that race. They watched from the stands. And they did not look happy. But there was another problem. And this one was mechanical. At sustained RPM above 6,200, oil pressure in early stroker builds would drop sharply. The longer crankshaft created increased load on the main bearings. The higher piston speeds demanded more oil flow. The original oiling system, designed for a shorter stroke engine, couldn't keep up. Oil starvation became a real threat. In several test engines, the rod bearings overheated, flattened, and began shedding material into the oil pan. Bronze particles contaminated the oil galleries. Main bearings showed signs of premature wear. One teardown revealed bearing shells that looked, according to engineer John Melton, like charcoal briquettes. Another showed scoring on the crankshaft journals so severe the crank had to be replaced. The engine was fast, but it was also fragile, at least temporarily. So Chrysler's solution? They redesigned the oiling system. Instead of feeding oil to the camshaft first, the standard B-block configuration, they drilled a dedicated oil gallery that routed pressurized oil directly to the crankshaft mains before reaching the top end of the engine. The mains got oil first, the cam got oil second. Simple, brutal, effective. Additional passages were drilled to ensure consistent flow under high RPM. Oil pump pressure was increased. Windage trays were added to prevent oil from splashing away from the pickup tube during hard acceleration. Suddenly, the stroker could survive 6,500 RPM pulls without pressure drop. One test engine ran for 16 hours on the dyno without bearing degradation, which made it even more dangerous to the HEMI program, because now it was reliable. And you can probably guess what happened next. Internal memos began circulating in early 1970. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Voices were raised. One memo, later discovered in Chrysler's archives, questioned whether introducing a factory-stroked 383 would undermine premium performance offerings and potentially cannibalize sales of the 426th Street HEMI. In plain English, if customers realized they could get near HEMI performance without paying HEMI prices, the HEMI's entire business case would collapse overnight. And it wasn't just about engine sales. The HEMI wasn't just an engine, it was a halo product, a marketing weapon, a reputation builder that helped Dodge and Plymouth dominate drag strips, NASCAR headlines, and magazine covers. The HEMI name sold Chargers to people who would never set foot on a racetrack. It made Chrysler cool. Killing that image with your own cheaper engine wasn't just bad business, it was corporate suicide. So Chrysler made a decision, a quiet decision, a careful decision. Instead of releasing the Stroker 383 to the public, they shelved the project permanently. Production resources were shifted toward the 446-pack program, which launched in 1969 with 3 two-barrel carburetors and 390 advertised horsepower. Marketing budgets doubled down on HEMI branding, pushing the elephant motor as the ultimate expression of American performance. Engineering teams were reassigned. Prototype parts were boxed up and sent to warehouses. Dyno data was filed away. And the Stroker disappeared. No press release, no announcement, no memo to dealers. Just gone, like it never existed. By 1971, the timing almost didn't matter anymore. Tightening emissions regulations were already strangling the muscle car market. The Clean Air Act of 1970 demanded dramatic reductions in hydrocarbon and nitrogen oxide emissions. Catalytic converters were coming. Lead-free gasoline was coming. Compression ratios dropped from 10.5.1 to as low as 8.5.1 in some engines. Camshaft profiles became more conservative. Ignition timing was retarded. Carburetor jetting was leaned out. Horsepower ratings fell across the board. The 446-pack dropped from 390 horsepower to around 330 by 1971. The 426 HEMI was officially discontinued after the 1971 model year, a victim of insurance premiums and emissions standards. Even the mighty 383 Magnum saw output decline to around 300 net horsepower by 1972 under the new SAE measurement standards. The muscle car era was dying, and the Stroker 383 died with it, except it never had a chance to live in the first place. But imagine what could have been: a factory-built 426 cubic inch stroker wedge engine, lighter than the 440, cheaper than the HEMI, more streetable than either. Capable of running low 12s right off the showroom floor, available as a $150 dealer option, backed by Chrysler's 5-year, 50,000-mile powertrain warranty. Imagine that engine in a 1969 Roadrunner, a 1970 Challenger, a 1971 Charger. Imagine the magazine covers, the drag strip trophies, the legends that would have been written. Instead, Chrysler chose to protect its hierarchy. They chose marketing over engineering. They chose image over innovation. They chose the safe path. And in doing so, they killed one of the most promising street performance engines they ever developed. Today, stroked 383 builds are everywhere in the aftermarket. You can buy complete rotating assembly kits from half a dozen manufacturers. Modern stroker builds can push displacement beyond 450 cubic inches with forged internals, aluminum cylinder heads, and 10.5.1 compression on pump gas. Some produce over 500 horsepower and 540 lb-ft of torque. Reliable, streetable, affordable, all from an engine that was never supposed to exist. Because the 383 stroker didn't fail. It wasn't unreliable. It wasn't too expensive. It wasn't too complicated. It was too good, too close to the HEMI, and too dangerous to the hierarchy Chrysler had spent millions building. In the end, Dodge didn't kill the 383 stroker because it couldn't win. They killed it because it might have won too easily. And somewhere, in a forgotten warehouse in Michigan, those prototype parts might still be sitting in boxes, waiting.